Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Going to be getting back to work on the MR2, where we left off in the last video. I was having issues getting the thing to run and not run right, and had 3 trouble codes popping up as far as the ECU scanner I got give me information on. So what I'm going to do is start with those things in this video, see if I can get them resolved, see if I can get this thing running a little better, and then we'll move on to the next steps. All right, so the first one I'm going to look into is with the coolant sensor. The scanner was telling me live that it was reading -40 constant, and I had an error for out of range. So I'm guessing something wasn't connected or wasn't reading the sensor. That's what it seemed like. So I did reach out to Paul Woods to discuss with him, and I think the issue was it was my fault. His patch harness, it allows you to run the 3-pin sensor, which covers both the ECU and the gauge in one sensor. So I did plug that plug for the 3-pin sensor in where you can see the sensor there. So I got that right. What I missed is in his patch harness, there is a two-wire plug. I thought that was just for if you were keeping your 2-wire plug. Well, no, you need to connect that to the 2-wire plug from the factory Sienna harness, or else it won't read. So that is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to try and locate those 2 wires that are dangling below there, because I didn't plug it in thinking I didn't need it. So I'm going to get those things connected. Once that's done, I'll turn the thing on and see what my readings look like, and hopefully I will be reading the coolant temperature sensor that is for the ECU. All right, so I got those 2 wires connected. You can see them there laying on top of the heater core lines, right next to the other, the actual new sensor and whatnot. So I'm gonna pull live data. And hey, what do you know? It's reading 51 degrees. It's not reading -40. So now we're in the right path, I think. So I'm going to try and get this thing to start, because the other issue I need to address is the other 2 codes I had were related to mass airflow sensor reading and intake air temperature reading, which with the Toyota, the intake air temperature is part of the mass air sensor. So I'm thinking it's either a loose connection or I have a bad sensor, because this is a used sensor that I acquired. So what I'm going to do is I want to see what the readings are, if they're moving at all, because that'll at least tell me if the sensor is somewhat functioning. If that's the case, maybe I can clean it and get it up and running by cleaning it. If I'm not getting any readings on either of those values, it's either something is not plugged in properly as far as the extension harness or whatnot, or it's a bad sensor. So I'm gonna see if I can get this thing to start up, and then I can start pulling the live data and see what we got going on. All right, well, it is running. It fired right up. First hit of the key, so that coolant temperature sensor, pretty important thing with getting these things running, it appears. So yeah, it fired right up, no problems. Looking at the data, it is reading for both the intake air temperature, which that matches what it is outside. It's about 50 degrees right now. And the mass airflow, it is getting a reading at least. So I'm gonna run it a little bit, get it up to temperature, see how it's running, and then I'll pull codes one more time and go from there. All right, well, I just cleared the codes out, and I'm looking at my stored codes. Nothing. That's good. Looking at my pending codes. Nothing there either. And looking at the dash, check engine light is off. So problem solved. I'm guessing the issue with the mass air was either from when it first started the other day and was just not running right, or maybe because it wasn't running right because of the coolant sensor. But either way, now the coolant sensor is hooked up. I am code free and check engine light free. That is a huge win. Very happy. All right, so it's been a few days since the last clip where I got the check engine lights to go away. Previous video or clips, I had mentioned that I needed to get clamps to tighten down the vacuum lines I had installed because they were still loose. In looking at them, I realized that, stupid me, I'd grabbed the 3/8 line, which I knew was too big, instead of the 5/16, which I had purchased, and that's why they weren't fitting right. So looked back at it, realized that, went and grabbed the 5/16 line that I purchased, installed that, and now everything's run. What I will say is 5/16 is definitely a little tight. If you can find 11/32, that's in between the two, that would probably be all right. That would probably be the better option. It'd probably fit snug enough, but go on a little bit better. I mean, the 5/16 will go on, but you do need to kind of line it a little bit with a little oil or, soapy water or antifreeze, something like that, just to kind of help it slide on all right. So just to kind of give you a heads up. But either way, I do have everything run. I've got the line going from the PCV to the top of the intake there, and then the one from the back of the intake snaked under going to the master cylinder. So those lines are in, that is done and off the checklist. Next on my list, I want to try and finish getting this cooling system purged and get the fans to kick on. Now that I have the scanner reader where I can see live data, I don't have to worry about overheating this thing. I was going by the gauge, and I think the gauge is going to read a little higher now. It seems to go almost 2/3 up, but according to the reader, it's not that hot. But I keep turning it off just to make sure. So what I'm going to do is top off the cooling system yet again, and then run this thing and see if I can get it to the point where the fans kick on. All right, it has been running for a while on its own. Right now it is 186 degrees Fahrenheit. It's kind of been sitting there for a while, so that's still plenty cool. As you can see, the gauge is definitely like at 2/3. So just to give you a heads up, factory gauge is probably going to read higher than you're used to. Like with my 3S Turbo, it never got above halfway. So something to think about. I have not touched the gas pedal yet. I've just been letting it warm up on its own. I'm going to do a little bit of revving, see if I can get it a little bit hotter, and see if I can get those fans to kick on. All right, we are now at 201 degrees. Once I started getting in this range, they did finally start cycling. Again, just to give you a heads up, that is what my gauge is reading at 201 degrees. So it's going to read high as you're driving this thing down the road, but that's probably going to be your high operating temperature where your fans start kicking in. So at least with my cluster, that seems to be the magic number, the magic location. But yeah, my fans have been cycling right around this temperature. The idle on the engine has definitely dropped. Its lowest idling at like 6 something. Yeah, it's like 670. Yeah, you can see it moving right there. So at this temperature, definitely idle's lower, but I at least have fans cycling, so I'm a lot less worried now. So that is one more thing off the list that I have to worry about. All right, and then now for the next issue to address is fuel leak. I did go ahead and tighten the fitting for the return line. It looks like that has stopped leaking, but it looks like I may have a leak where it bolts to the fuel filter, which that is a common issue if you're not using the right size crush washer. It won't seal perfectly. So it looks like I do have to pull the regulator off and find a better crush washer, grind down those little nubs on the Toyota filter that stick up and cause problems. So it looks like that is something I am going to have to address. All right, next day, everything has cooled off. So I think what I'm gonna try and do is knock out 2 more things before finishing up the video, because this video is getting kind of long. I want to see if I can address the fuel leak, and then I'm gonna pull the mass air sensor and clean it, since I already bought the cleaner spray and I have to take it out to get to the fuel filter and lines anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this pulled out real quick, and then I can start taking apart the fuel filter setup and see if I can get this leak fixed. All right, little update. This is the fitting that is the issue. This is the one that goes into the top of the fuel filter, and then the regulator screws onto this side. The problem is the crush washer that goes between this fitting and the fuel filter. There are raised edges in the fuel filter, and you have to find the right size washer that'll fit between those edges. Problem was the one I had was just ever so slightly too big, so I think it was catching on those, but it was enough that would fit over this fitting. What I ended up doing is fine, and it was an aluminum one. I found this copper one in my batch of crush washers. This one fits loosely inside the little raised edges on the fuel filter, but it wasn't big enough to fit over the fitting. So what I did is I took a drill bit, stepper drill bit, that style, and just slowly and very carefully worked open the inside of it so it will fit into the fitting. So now I should be good. I'm going to go ahead and get this torqued down. I'm going to deburr the edges real quick just to make sure there's no high spots, and then go ahead and get this torqued down onto the top of the fuel filter, get everything reinstalled, and hopefully we'll be leak free. All right, just real quick. Here you can see what I'm talking about. You can see kind of the raised edges there, the shiny parts. I've got this, and there's enough where it can move around inside of those, and it's not just like pinned into place. It wiggles when it's seated. So that's what you want. You need a crush washer that won't bind up on those high edges. All right, quick update. I got everything reinstalled. As you can see, the regulator is in a different position. It's about 90 degrees from where it was before. So I did have to loosen the bracket for the fuel filter as well as the two bolts that hold it on, get everything to pivot right. I do have the return line on. It's hard to see, but there is just enough clearance between it and the frame rail. The fuel filter is now sitting higher in the bracket than it used to, but I was able to do what I need to do to make it fit. So all I need to do is reattach the feed line to the top and we should be good. All right, I got the feed line installed, and now I'm going to clean the mass air sensor. This is what I'm using. It's just like a small 4-ounce can. I'll just spray it, and get the air temperature little diode there, and then spray it down and clean the stuff that's in there as well. All right, everything is reinstalled temporarily for now. I'm still not done with the mass air sensor or the intake, so I'll have to still bundle all the wiring and resheath it and stuff like that underneath. So just screwed it on. I still don't have the brace or anything in, but I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing fired up and see if we have any leaks. Well, it's been running for a while, and bad news, it is still leaking. It doesn't appear to be the return fitting going into the regulator. It does appear to be something with the adapter or the regulator where it does go to the fuel filter. So I might have to just try and torque on it more, get it really, really tight. I'm not sure. Yeah, it may just be one of those things where it's just not wanting to tight. I may have to get a new fuel filter. Maybe there's something with this Toyota one and those lips, and it just doesn't want to, or the edges aligned, just doesn't want to meet up right. So I may just buy like an aftermarket one that doesn't have those raised edges. Not sure, but yeah, it's something I'm going to have to look into resolving, because right now I do have a minor fuel leak still. So that being said, I think this video is probably going to be long enough. So unfortunately, I'm going to be leaving this as an open item that'll have to be taken care of, hopefully in the next video. So if you're learning something, if this is finding value, please like, please subscribe, please hit the notification bell. Feel free to ask any questions, leave any comments, I will respond. But yeah, thanks for following along. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.